Okay, cool. Now let's get started with this new proposal. This is the goal is to improve our experience and do some automation with current dev on call. So please go ahead with the first question.
Do we want to do a quick overview of what
Yeah,
we're doing?
yeah, that we wanted to.
Yeah, go for it, Nick.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just share my screen really quick and kind of rock it through a couple slides. Hopefully that'll provide some background. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we are we're proposing iterating on an infradev on call process. We're looking for feedback. So again, this is just a proposal. We're not ready to move forward just yet. So love to get your feedback. Yeah, we've had success with the dev on call process so far. Yeah, we've got 100 engineers in the rotation. We're seeing a lot of strong collaboration and many resolved incidents. But there's some opportunities for improvement. Right now, the scheduling process is very manual, complicated, as well as the escalation process is also manual right now. So we're looking to automate it. The questions that we're asking ourselves is, can we better leverage sort of the globally distributed team that we have? Can we better utilize automation? And then also we have issues with country-specific requirements. So we're wondering how we can handle all that. So specifically, we're talking about splitting weekday versus weekend on call and trying to automate the weekday process as much as possible. And that automation would take place using a bot. I can go into a little bit of how that's going to work. So scheduling during the weekday would be any backend engineer with a greater than a 3-month tenure. And those engineers would subscribe to the dev escalation channel. And the bot would have the ability to track the engineer's current working hours and whether they're presently online. So what would an escalation look like? So an escalation would basically happen like this. The incident would occur, and the SRE determines that they need help from development. They would type incident or some other command in the dev escalation Slack channel. That command would trigger the bot to select a backend engineer based on its algorithmic criteria. We can get a little bit into the criteria next. If the backend engineer does not respond within 5 minutes or another period of time that we determine, a secondary would be notified by the bot. The backend engineer would respond to the bot with eyes and then work towards triaging it. So the selection criteria basically would be whether, so there's a few things, and in terms of the priority of these, we can determine how we want to prioritize them. Because not everyone can work or can take part or participate in the weekend on-call process, we're thinking about including some criteria that if they sign up for a weekend or if they're part of the weekend escalation process, that they would be deprioritized for the weekday escalations. Also, selection criteria would include the working hours. Everyone sets their own working hours, and so it would be able to track that, whether they're online, and then also how recently they dealt with a prior escalation, so that not everyone is getting selected all the time for escalations. So we do have a bot demo, which James Lopez has, and he's kind of the architect of this bot, so kudos to James. He's got a video. Please check it out of demoing that. We're not going to go into the demo right now. So then weekend on call would continue to operate as the on-call process currently works, or the scheduling process currently works. It would be done manually via the spreadsheet. And it's currently mandatory to take part in it for anyone who's legally eligible to participate. The differences here would be that the bot would, basically in order to keep the escalation flow as similar as possible between the weekday and the weekend, the bot would point to the spreadsheet, whenever they type /incident or whatever command, it would trigger a message to say, hey, go look in the spreadsheet, so that the process would be as similar as possible from weekday to weekend. The benefits here are that we're expecting that there will be fewer weekend slots required because we have this globally distributed team. And so likely there's going to be a lot fewer number of slots to fill. It should make scheduling easier. So that's part of what should make this making the process better. And then, and again, I mentioned previously that weekend participants we're proposing that they would be deprioritized for the weekday escalation. So let's move into questions.
And I think the first one's from Matthias. You want to verbalize?
Hi,
Okay.
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm assuming you can hear me. Yeah, it was just, it's already been answered basically, so thanks for this. My main concern was when I first saw the proposal that it sounded like it would basically put every single engineer into on-call standby, which to me is kind of synchronous mode, because in case of an incident, you would have to make yourself available and respond within like a certain amount, like a couple of minutes at most. So that was my main concern, because yeah, like being like async communication is like one of our main ideals, and I want to make sure that this can be preserved. So if you want to sign out of Slack for an hour or so that you don't disrupt that process, that was my main concern. But it sounded like the bot actually accounts for this already, so that's really great to see.
Yeah. I guess to just kind of address your thought on the async, I totally agree with you. Async is critical in this situation. We obviously need the synchronous connection because we're trying to, escalate it to a specific person. So I guess James, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that makes sense. I think it's not a big issue in terms of getting pinged, because you won't get pinged, or you won't have to be on call like before, like every month or so. Once you get pinged, you may not get pinging maybe 1 or 2 years. So it won't be like being on standby all the time. We can probably implement something to check whether you're going to be pinged maybe soon. So just to be aware of it. But in any case, the bot won't ping you. You're offline, do not disturb mode, or away on Slack. So if you're busy or you're on having lunch, the bot won't ping you. What it will do is just ping the next. If you're next, it will skip you and then ping the next person directly. So it won't show that ping. What would happen in that case is that you will still be at the top of the list. So next time, when you're actually online there, you will get pinged.
And I also want to add to the data. So the worst case we have seen so far is about 8 incident calls per month. So that's the maximum. Usually we are below this threshold. So just add to the data point, the likelihood of being pinged is low.
Yes, excellent. Thank you for clarifying. Very helpful.
Could I ask a follow-up, James? You mentioned that there might be a mechanism where we can be warned that, okay, you're coming up, you're next. So you all are definitely doing that? That would be great.
Yeah, we can definitely implement that. It's quite easy, to be honest. I think it's a bit tricky to know exactly, because who's going to be next is definitely someone who has to be online. We don't know who's going to be online before the next incident. However, we can point a list of people, maybe, I don't know, say 20 or something, who are going to be next. and if they're online, they can be pinged. So they know that probably in the next couple of months, they may get pinged, basically, or in the next month.
I think that's great.
Amy, I think you had the next question.
Great, thanks very much. And thanks for putting all this together. Like, it's really great to see this evolving. My question really was about the weekday escalation selection process. Just wanted to make it clear, like we have back-end engineers in infrastructure, and I see from notes also other places, quality, for example, just to make it clear that they're already in a different on-call rota. So we need to make sure they remain excluded from this process.
I can answer that question pretty much. I think first of all, this process page is under the development department, so it's kind of indication. I mean, a hint, and also in the process statement, it says it's a development engineers, and of course, infrastructure is a peer to the development department. So I hope that's also kind of indication or hint that the process participants are all in the Oncall engineers only come from the development department.
That's great. Thanks very much.
James?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got next one. Yeah, just something that I can just mention that we need to decide on the slash command, if we want to use a slash command. Instance staking, I think infrastructure is probably using it. We can use slash on call or something else, but as I say there, we can take this offline and maybe create an issue or something and vote. Yeah, I don't have any preference. Next is Olivier.
So, Olivier, are you on? Sounds like no. So I can read it just to verbalize. So Olivier said, can we reconcile data about on-call availability with the team YAML file? For example, tell whether or not a team member is doing dev on call, if they can do weekends, or willing to, if that proposal is approved. We have too many spreadsheets to deal with today, which are difficult to keep track of.
Nicholas, you want to verbalize your answer?
Yeah.
Bruce?
Yeah. I definitely think that better leveraging the team YAML or coming up with another YAML file that we could use to for even scheduling would be better for us, because that's going to allow for the bot to be able to better ingest that data, and may even enable us to utilize the bot more expansively on the weekends and not have to leverage the spreadsheet. So I would definitely.
Yeah, we definitely want to get away from the spreadsheet because it's unwieldy to work with, and you have to chase after the team to fill up open slots. So we'd be getting away at least from the spreadsheet at the start. The spreadsheet would be for weekends only, and we wouldn't have a spreadsheet for weekdays.
Yeah, as much as automation, that will be the goal we shoot for. So this iteration is about automating the weekdays, and weekend we still have to stick to the spreadsheet because it's a little bit challenging for implement the bot. From my point, just to note that there are certain information about of the eligibility is no public. So if we roll that information into Team YAML, we may have a problem here. So if we have a separate YAML file that's internal, no problem at all. But just a caution that Team YAML is public, so we need to keep the no public information out of it.
Gary, I think you've got number 5.
Gary?
Yeah, with rotation slots for responding to an incident coming up, as you're saying, every year or two for engineers, and we change processes quite often. So even when you're doing a particular task, even once a month, it's very easy to have drift in your knowledge and your awareness of both the process as well as general practices. And I haven't really seen any sort of thoughts around how that will impact. For example, if I know that I have a rotation, on-call rotation coming up on, say, Friday, on a Wednesday, I can say, oh, I have an hour. I can go review the process, or so I understand what to do if there is an incident, versus I'm working away on a random Tuesday and suddenly I get a ping and I have to go dive into an incident room where I may not know what to do or who to talk to or how to interact with that team and process. So is there any sort of like thinking around expanded training or more emphasis on engineers being current on response policies?
Yeah, there have been a lot of discussions about the training, and we consolidated several ideas there in the resources section of the process. I think the most, from my past experience, the most effective way to get up to speed is to participate or rehearsal, do some rehearsal, then just ride along with some active incidents, ongoing incidents, see how that goes. That may give you, the visibility of how the process looks like, how people work together to troubleshoot or triage the incident, and also give you exposure of the tools we're using and how to approach the incident. So I think the best, my personal opinion, the best approach is to ride along with ongoing incident and to see what's ongoing, the incident channel, incident management channel. There are a lot of incidents reported there. So I would encourage everyone to join that or ride along with SREs.
Yeah, I guess I also wanted to follow that up with saying that the original proposal issue included a section on kind of improving training and onboarding for on-call participants. We kind of decided to scope this to just escalation and better scheduling, basically automating scheduling and escalation for now. I think that kind of addressing sort of improved training or even improved access to like run books of what of how developers should address an incident is something that we could definitely follow up with, and I think that's a really important thing for sure. Next question.
Hi, so I have a question about, sorry, do you hear me? So when we have to voluntarily choose what type of shifts do we want, like weekdays or weekends. So like, will we have some understanding how many shifts in the case of weekends will be assigned per person? And if there will be like the process to switch back from the weekends to the weekdays and back.
So with the as it exists in the current proposal is, if you sign up today for weekends, you'll still sign up for weekends. And people who are part of the weekend sign up via the spreadsheet will still be on for weekdays, as they are to still be on for weekdays. But we're thinking about making it so that the bot does not prefer the people on weekends for weekday escalation, which is not perfect, we understand, but that's at least our current, where we're at in current iteration of thinking. Is that accurate, Chun and Nicholas? Is that where we landed so far?
Yes. So my understanding is that it's going to mirror presently what's happening, which is that right now weekdays are mandatory for anyone that qualifies, and weekends are mandatory for those that are within a country where that's legal. And so this would mirror that. Like, everything's going to continue to be mandatory. But there would be a deprioritization of those that are on that weekend list, so they would likely not get called up during the weekday. So to kind of address your question, there's not really a choice, necessarily a voluntary choice weekend or weekday from my understanding of this, because it kind of depends on where you live and what the kind of legal framework is
Yeah, so
of
I guess
the
it
country.
doesn't change whether one signs up for weekday or weekend. It's how the escalation happens on weekday or weekend is what we're thinking about changing here. Does that help? Does that help to explain it, Tatiana?
No, it's kind of a bit confused. So, for example, I want to participate in a weekend shift. So it's so I'll be able to do it. But for example, if it will require for me like staying in front of my computer every week,
So from your
it's kind of,
perspective, if you sign up for a weekend shift, as you are today, anyone who signs up for a weekend shift, when they sign up for their weekend shift, they'll need to be available for escalations during that time window, just like it is today. And then during the weekday, if an incident comes up, the bot will look to see who was most or least recently escalated something during the weekday, and also take into account did that for those people who took a weekend shift recently, and it'll prefer people who did not do a weekend shift recently and have not gotten an escalation during the weekday recently. So basically, if you do a weekend shift, you are much less likely to get an escalation during the weekday. That's our intent.
I think I get Tatiana's question because we have a shortage of weekend eligibility. Some people may be assigned to weekend spots in consecutive weekends. I mean, this weekend, next weekend, they get assignment again. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer here because of the legal restrictions. We don't have a good solution here. It's just a very small subset of the people who can do the weekend on-call shift. Good ideas, I mean, creative ideas are welcome to suggest. We are more than glad to adopt those good suggestions. But at this point,
the good part is that because because we're not going to have a schedule for weekdays, a fixed schedule for weekdays where people sign up for slots, the number of slots that people sign up for should, in theory, be much less than they are today, because there are fewer of them. It'll be a little less than 2 days a week versus 7 days a week.
And one practical improvement we can make is probably, have people have the phone calls. I mean, the SREs probably can reach out by phone calls. That will be more direct and will stop you or not requiring everyone to be, sitting, have the laptop always in front of you. We can use the phone calls. And that's
yeah,
process.
Yeah, I guess because I've actually gotten a lot of inquiries about this as well, about how to be on call. So in this scenario on a weekend, if you're on call, let's say you have a 4-hour block, my expectation is that you wouldn't be on the computer during that 4-hour block, because SREs should have your phone number. So typically, like when I was on call, you just have your phone and you have Slack on. So they can either Slack you or they can call your phone number, and you just have to be able to get to a computer within 5 minutes. So you have your computer in your backpack or something. But during the week in this scenario, or with this proposal, there's no reason to be constantly watching the channel unless you're pinged. So you shouldn't feel like you're always on call just because you're in the channel. Hopefully it should provide a little bit more feeling of flexibility. Like if you need to step out, then you're not going to get pinged, like that type of thing. It's kind of it's trying to optimize for this globally distributed team that we have. That's kind of the point, and also to kind of leverage all the folks like as they're online. So does that help at all? Does it make any?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the answer.
Something else to add that I've popped in point number 8 is just that People Ops and Legal is also working on reviewing this from a policy standpoint to try to level the playing field a bit on the weekends and have more people eligible to work on the weekends if they choose to do so. So as Chun mentioned, we don't have a great solution today, but we're working on making this a bit more equal for everyone.
Thank you. Moving to next, Seth.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the weekday escalation procedure may have some challenges on a couple of days throughout the year, things like Christmas or New Year's, where probably a lot of people across the globe are taking off, or things like contribute. So I just want to highlight that that could cause problems, and I don't know whether we want to look at a volunteer system for that or having named people for those particular days.
How do we do that? It's a great question, Seth. How do we do that with the current process? Do we look for, I guess we look for signups on those days in the spreadsheet, just like as if they were any other day. So perhaps we should treat holidays that are very common or that a large number of GitLab team members take off as basically treat them like weekends.
I think right now what we are doing eligibility-wise is weekday. I mean, if it's a weekday, if the holiday falls in a weekday. But on the other hand, we treat those as weekend, so people can take extra time off or other approaches as a compensation of the weekend holiday call. So.
Okay, Christopher?
Yeah, just wanted to double check. We like two-way door decisions, so it sounds like this is a two-way door decision, right?
Yeah, we should be able to roll it back if it's not working or we need to iterate.
Cool. All right. And then the other part is, have we set up feedback post-process? Because it's important that we make sure engineers feel comfortable that they can give us feedback if it's not working for them.
We don't have an issue yet for that, but we can definitely craft one up.
Yeah, I think that'd be good to the overall messaging. Cool.
And Brent, you have a last question we have in the doc so far.
Yeah. So my concern as representing the team that escalates to development is the time it takes to get somebody. And I believe I've expressed this in other calls. I don't have my Slack notifications turned off and I'm on, and I'm assuming others might. And so like this process relies on folks having notifications turned on in Slack. And so how many times is the bot going to iterate until it finds somebody? Because when we do escalate, we absolutely need somebody as soon as we can. And if it's looping through a few times and, you know, yeah, I'm just trying to understand that a bit. And then I dive into maybe just hopefully not an overly critical question, but are we solving a problem that we could solve with just more robust schedule tooling and maybe some slight changes to how the dev escalation is created? So it's a bit more, I guess, yeah, the scheduling tooling is the thing that we've been tripping over, because you have to go into a spreadsheet and look at, do some date time math. Plus, I know from the developer side of things, like it's hard to trade, it's hard to do some things. And so I just called up some open source tooling that's used by some rather large companies like Target and LinkedIn that does a lot of this scheduling. So yeah, a couple of questions there. So
let's no, great questions. Let's separate it. So the controlling in place to limit the time to escalate. So the current bot, we said 5 minutes. If the person who it picks does not acknowledge within 5 minutes, it goes on to the next least recently escalated to person who is online and do not disturb. We can change that, of course, and then if that person doesn't, but that's at least what we have in place currently.
Yeah, I guess, and to me, because it's automated, we have flexibility, right? We can reduce the amount of time in terms of further escalating, or we can even contact multiple people. We could have it ping 2 people in the first, because the idea of this is that it's a first responder program, that whoever gets there first can be the one to help. So, but also trying to deal with the bystander effect, because if it just broadcasts into a channel, the likelihood of somebody picking it up is less. So we want to select specific people that can be the DRI for that, at that moment. So we could ping multiple people. We could have, instead of 5 minutes, it could be 2 minutes, in order to, get, a quicker response time.
And we could have the bot track time to respond. So we could check that. So we could look at trends over time and then optimize it. Maybe after 3 escalations, and if it misses after 3 people, it does a @channel to ping everybody, which is a sledgehammer form of escalation, which nobody prefers. But maybe after a certain time period, if more than X number of people don't respond within the time period, then it would do that.
I feel this goes back to Christopher's question about if there's a two-way door. So I think this is one thing we need to watch if it works well or not. We need to have a threshold of missed incidents, missed calls. Once we reach that threshold, that proves that this new way doesn't work well for us, then we should revert back. We should make a call.
I'm worried about experimenting in that way. I mean, this is like GitLab site reliability, and we have a pretty narrow margin. And when we slip that margin, we owe customers money. So I'm worried about also reinforcing some bad behaviors from my team of just like automatically just adding the channel if the bot doesn't respond fast enough. So that's why I brought in the second question.
What's your SLA here, Brent?
Sorry?
What's your SLA here?
Well, I mean, I think the page states what, 15 minutes, or Chun, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a code change in 15 minutes, that's
no, I'm looking for somebody to respond.
Like we've already violated the SLA. Like we got to make sure we're proportional here, right?
Well, no. So Christopher, to be clear, I'm looking for somebody to respond and be engaged in the Zoom call in 15 minutes. That's the SLA I'm looking at.
Okay.
Not somebody to solve the problem.
Is that the SLA to the customer?
No, that's currently the SLA stated on the dev escalation handbook page.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that's fair that you're looking for a response, not the code change.
So perhaps, that's good. So perhaps, and we can iterate. And I want to get to your next question as well, Brent. But perhaps in the bot, we would go to maybe we would initially tag the next 3 least recently escalated 2 people, and then wait that wait a certain amount of time, wait 10 minutes because the SLA is 15, and then if we don't see one of them respond or acknowledge within that 10 minutes, then @channel.
Yeah, you're solving the problem, though we don't know it's a problem yet.
True.
That's the reason why I jumped in here. So the SLA is 15 minutes. How often do we violate it currently?
It's been pretty not actually. Like the last handful of incidents, we've gotten somebody pretty quickly.
So we should have a pretty good sample size, right? Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to understand here.
But to add to that, we have an explicit person.
Sorry, let me throw out an idea. Your concern's valid that the change can cause problems. Proposed way to address this is for the first month, we don't fully switch over. We actually still have a plan. So then you're guaranteed somebody's going to show up, but then we see whether or not the actual hit actually happens associated with that. I don't really like doing it for a full month, but the problem is we only have 8 a month, so it's hard to get a good sample size from that perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, the process we have right now, it's reliable. It's not the easiest to use from the developer side of things, because I think it's really hard to like shuffle your schedule if you suddenly have something that you need to do, and it's like also being reminded if you're on call. So I do recognize the difficulty there, but and as much as I complain about doing daytime math when I look at the spreadsheet, like we know who's on call and can immediately get that person. And yeah, they've been I haven't had a problem then. I'm just concerned here where we're relying on a mechanism where people might inadvertently flag themselves as not being able to be pageable just by nature of how they want to work that day or use Slack. So
right, so that's what I'm saying is in the first month you're still using the spreadsheet, but then and we have the spreadsheet lined up, but then also we're tagging people, and if people show up to Slack channel in a timely fashion, then we actually have that sample initially.
No, I like the parallel approach. I think that could work.
What about
I just
IT?
want to say,
Like, we need feedback from ICs on that, though. I want to make sure they don't feel like they're getting overburdened on it. Go ahead, James.
yeah, sorry. I was going to mention that if someone is D&D or away, the bot will skip it. So it won't waste time. Maybe there's like milliseconds there. And then it will ping the next available person. And if there's a delay of 15 minutes, I mean, we can, instead of 5 minutes, we can wait less, we can ping more people. There's a few things we can do there. And again, the bot as it is right now is just an MVC. We can also add more features around it. But as Christoph says, we don't know if it's a problem yet. I agree with having perhaps a month both the schedules and then see what happens.
Okay, let's make sure to get feedback, because I don't want to, like I said, I want to, but that's the way we can alleviate this concern at the same time. That's kind of at least one suggestion. If somebody's got a better suggestion, I'm open to ideas.
So just to clarify with the parallel approach, the hope for situation is that the person pinged is the one who responds and that the scheduled person is backup. Is that correct?
Something like that. And if we pass the 15 minutes as an all, then definitely refer to the spreadsheet and ping the specific person who is on the spot.
Yeah, I think we can get the bots to do that. So if after X number of minutes, say 15, then just ping back whoever triggered the incident saying, hey, just check the spreadsheet because nobody responded or something like that. So it should be very easy to automate as well.
Yeah, actually, in this particular scenario, I'd love both individuals to respond. And you know, if they need to collaborate to work on the problem, then that's even better from that perspective. You know, we're not. My understanding of this program is we're not waking people up to answer a call. So like, you know, that's something we can, you know, at least in the short term, we can manage it in that process.
So Brent, your other question, which is another great question, you know, how about other tools like Go Alert or On-Call tools or what LinkedIn released open source? Is we evaluated these and they are designed for having a small number of people in a rotation in many different groups. And that's not the situation that we have. We have a large number of people. So the small groups by like 10 people. It might be, you know, one group supporting the database, another group supporting, you know, authentication, another group supporting logging, or, you know, kind of by feature and by component. And we have a large number of people, you know, 200 people in this larger rotation signing up by schedule, not by, you know, the escalation path of, you know, this person first, then this person, then this person. So those tools, we could obviously, you know, some of them are open source and we could modify them for our needs. But when we went down that, it's like they don't meet our needs as is. And based on the survey that we did across the team, they preferred more of, it led us towards the path of this weekday. We have enough volunteers or people interested in doing this weekday rotation via Slack, and then weekends the other way. So we did look at them. We surely could use some of them. And I'd love to get rid of the spreadsheet completely. We're going to consider that in something in the future, depending on how this goes.
Thanks.
So I think the best thing we can do is to experiment this in parallel for a certain period. We can decide how long that is and see how it goes. Then at that point, we decide if we continue this as the official rollout or we revert back to the current way that completely relying on the spreadsheet. I mean, right now we are just not certain about the reliability versus the flexibility.
So Robert, I think you have the next question.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the conversation about making this a voluntary process, because this was an add-on. You know, if you signed on and it's specifically not part of your role, this is an add-on, like extra responsibilities and duties. So we talked about making this voluntary so that the folks who were able to or wanted to could sign up. And I see some answers down here.
Yeah,
so that's just,
net is we didn't get enough volunteers for the weekend to be able to cover the weekends. The folks who did volunteer would have been taking more than their share of the work. It wasn't enough volunteers, so that's why we didn't go down volunteer for the weekend. Does that make sense, Robert?
It makes sense. I still don't like it, but it makes sense. So, disagree and commit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just to address that a little bit. So originally the idea was to create more like a first responder program, like more like a specialized group of folks that were trained and that could jump in when they needed to. And it seemed like after we did the survey, we just didn't get enough feedback that people would be interested in supporting or taking part in a weekend on call or a weekend first responder program. So that's where it had to shift a little bit. I would like to revisit it a little bit in terms of the training onboarding though, because I think that would be valuable. But in terms of voluntary sort of first responder, we didn't see the participation or the interest in that.
So I suppose my question is, this is technically the SRE role. So have we, could we consider engaging more SREs, like adding more to that headcount, getting them the training and the support to do that? Because that really is the SRE rule, and you're always in. I've been in that role, and you're engaged in it full time. You know what's going on. You know the changing processes. We've seen a lot more events in the last few months, and I watch them, and a lot of them feel like we're not doing the things we need to do to stop things from rolling into production. And that's putting the SREs into a terrible spot of having to roll back and then us responding. A lot of that's like in our processes, like, the main branch is red quite often and things roll out broken and we have to roll them back. And we've seen that a couple of times. We've seen that go out. We have 13.2, it's about to drop broken. These kinds of things, right? We're not protecting ourselves. And so the on-call is kind of patching something that's broken. So I'm wondering, what are we doing to iterate against that? Like, that's because I feel like that's more the core thing. I'm not trying to be mean here, so please don't take it that way. But I see that we're trying to address a problem by adding more blankets to the fire instead of just putting out the fire. So that's what I'm trying to wrap my brain around as well.
Yeah, I mean, like we should be adding wet blankets to the fire. Yeah, I mean, to me that seems really important, but a little different in terms of like we shouldn't be pushing broken code. I mean, should just be standard, right? We should be pushing things that we feel good about. But this was more to add an optimization. Like the problem that we saw was in the scheduling and the escalation, having that be all manual. That needed to be optimized. I think what you're bringing up is super important, but maybe separate. I think. I can definitely. Sorry.
It's orthogonal. I do understand that. It's just I've tried to stay engaged with this process as it's changed over time, and I feel like I've never felt like there's been a good answer to that question. So as we iterate this process, I just felt like it needed to come back up. And if there's a more appropriate place to have that discussion, let me know. I'm always happy to add thoughts. I didn't know where else to put it.
No, yeah, I mean, I'd definitely love to follow up with you on it. Sounds interesting to me.
And Juliana, you had some perspective on this as well.
Yeah, so I mentioned above, legal and people ops are kind of working on making it so everyone who's interested in weekend shifts is eligible to do so from a legal standpoint. But it sounds like this is more, just based on Wayne and Nicholas's comments, it's more of a volunteer challenge versus an eligibility challenge from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, not enough people wanted to volunteer for a weekend, and I can personally understand why.
Yeah.
There weren't enough volunteers for the weekend to make it a volunteer program.
Cool.
I suggest maybe we do a follow-up survey after this call to see if we are good to experiment this. So I would like to get a consensus if we are good to experiment this in some way, like a parallel proposal that we have an evaluation period to make sure that this works well.
Yeah,
and so far,
I'm sorry, Tim,
so far I haven't seen very, very big red flags, but I recognize Brent's concern here about the reliability. I think that's a moderate, I mean, from 1 to 10, that's kind of a 7, a score of 7 of concern. But we probably can justify that through our experiment.
Yeah, I think with one of the ideas I think that came from Christopher earlier, of keeping the spreadsheet in the first month. So you use the bot first, and then the bot, if the bot does not get the attention of someone who acknowledges in a certain period of time, then we go to the spreadsheet. I think that lowers the risk significantly of a significantly delayed escalation. We'd have to play with the time frames. Like, how long do we wait before we go to the spreadsheet? Maybe it's not very long. Maybe it's only 5 minutes before we go to the spreadsheet, and we make sure the spreadsheet, the slots are figured out. That would cover us on the risk side of having a significantly delayed escalation. We actually, in theory, and hopefully, would have faster escalations with this. But we surely don't know that until we try it. So I'm not at doing a survey to see if we should move forward. I think that idea lowers our risk significantly. But that's just my opinion.
I'm good with that if everybody here on the call agrees that there's no significant concern to move forward to the experiment.
What do you think, Brent? Yeah, this not just a signal. It's not a question only for you, but you brought up this concern first, and it's a very valid one. What do you think?
About the in parallel effort, or?
Yeah, for the first month, continue to have the spreadsheet for all time windows, and the bot waits only, a small number of minutes, maybe 5 or 10, before it encourages the SRE to use the spreadsheet. And we make sure there's a coverage in the spreadsheet to lower our risk in case the bot Slack escalation is not successful often enough.
I mean, I'd be comfortable with that. So I did appreciate that suggestion earlier from Christopher.
Okay. Sorry, I'm talking on mute. Other folks' thoughts on that? Just if that reduces the risk of a significantly delayed escalation. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
But I know we just said no survey, or I was not in favor of survey. Could we do a quick if you're in favor of us moving forward, us being GitLab moving forward with this, can you do a reaction of a thumbs up in Zoom and get a general feel for it? Thanks. And if not, don't do anything. So it's about half-ish of that are saying thumbs up. So okay, thank you.
So then, what are the next steps then? What are we going to do?
I think go ahead, John.
Probably we work together about how to implement this process-wise. I mean, practical-wise, how to implement this experiment, like the parallel. We need to spell out how the parallel program works, and what are the expectations and the timeline and the exit criteria, whether we keep this going or we revert back to the spreadsheet approach. So some of those practical guidelines.
Yeah, and Chun, can you get you and I and Nicholas and James and anyone else interested, and maybe do a debrief and sync call, sometime in the next week to determine next steps from here. Does that sound good?
Yeah, and meanwhile, before that, I will create an issue to check all the discussions and summarize in the issue.
Awesome. Yeah, and so it's been that group of the 4 of us, at least initially, working on this with feedback from many folks. If anyone would like to be more put time into this to help guide it as we make the decisions and go forward, in addition to commenting and on issues and being in this meeting, please, I guess since Chun's going to schedule the meeting, just let Chun know. We'd be more than happy to include you in the discussions where we
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And the channel we continue the discussion is called Oncall -test. I mean, I'll type it here, so everybody is welcome to join that channel.
Thank you, everyone. This has been an awesome collaborative discussion on debating this and talking about the pros and cons and figuring out what to do from here.
I'll broadcast the video link after it's published to the YouTube to development, and and we can meet our engineering weekend review. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.